I cannot wait for the drama that will be the NFL Draft, the best reality show on television. And as it always does, it surrounds the quarterbacks, right? We're going to see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. We'll be talking about that all day long. From what I'm hearing, and I'm sure if you are a big NFL fan, you've read the reports, Mac Jones is going to San Francisco at 3. Now, there are days when Kyle Shanahan leans towards Trey Lance because the ceiling is so high for that young man, but he's kind of in love, a little bit, maybe infatuated is the word, with Mac Jones. Those around him, there are some in the front office that prefer Trey Lance, and it seemingly is an ideal scenario for a young, inexperienced quarterback to come into with Jimmy Garoppolo there. It could be very similar to the Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith situation. But the numbers for Mac Jones in his lone season as a full-time starter were just off the charts. 41 interceptions, 41 touchdown passes with just 4 interceptions. And that completion percentage of 77% is the highest ever in college football history. 77%. There are guys on their pro days who don't complete 77% of their passes. Yet we are infatuated with how Mac Jones looks with the shirt off. That's what we're talking about. Oh, they're going to draft this guy. They're up in arms in the Bay Area. How can we draft Mac Jones? You have Trey Lance out there. You have Justin Fields out there. I mean, look at these guys, and we're going to draft Mac Jones. I would say this. If there's one guy in the NFL that I would trust when it comes to quarterbacks, it would probably be Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, and I think he's sold on Mac. But again, as I've been told, there are certain days. There's 7 days in the week, right? 5 days a week, he's taking Mac Jones. There might be 2 days when he's like, maybe I can make something out of this Lance kid. So you guys had Trey on yesterday.
Oh, my goodness. Tremendous interview. Great kid. You can just hear it in his voice. The leadership, the work ethic. I want him in New England in the worst way.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to mortgage the farm. I'm from Washington. I'm a huge fan of the burgundy and gold. I would love to see him. What was that? As a Cowboys fan over there? I would love to see him there if he slides to the teens, which I don't think is going to happen.
Right,
I think he's certainly going to be a top 10 pick. And I can't see New England trading. As a matter of fact, Ian Rappaport said yesterday, there are probably going to be fewer trades than we anticipate in the first round.
Oh, interesting.
Because the cost of doing business is so great. The 49ers set the bar high, trading 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick to move from 12 to 3. So you're moving up 9, 10 picks. It's going to cost you a couple of first-rounders. Are you willing to do that? That's going to be the question for a lot of these teams. Maybe if you're sold on a Justin Fields and you had him number 2 on your board right behind Trevor Lawrence, or Trey Lance is number 2 on your board, and you say, man, I can get him at 9, I can get him at 10. Maybe I get that guy. The draft starts at 4. We know it's 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks, right? So what is Atlanta going to do? The consensus out there right now seems to be that they draft the player many are calling the best player in this draft in Kyle Pitts at tight end, who most think immediately will become one of the top 3 tight ends in football and eventually will become the best tight end in football, a more athletic version of Travis Kelce. He's an absolute monster. But then if you're the Bengals, do you go offensive lineman or do you go wide receiver to give Joe Burrow somebody else to throw to? And the Dolphins obviously not going to draft a quarterback. They're content with Tua. Do the Cowboys move up? Maybe not. There's just so much drama, so many questions, involved.
So much drama.
But I will say that at this juncture, the most polarizing player in the draft has to be Mac Jones. Has to be the guy that if he doesn't get drafted by San Francisco, how far does he slide? Does he go out of the top 10? Are the 49ers the only team infatuated with this Alabama quarterback? It's endless.
So interesting because if you look at the teams that probably or might take a quarterback, it's Detroit, it's Denver, it's Carolina maybe. They're talking about it. New England definitely is in the market for a quarterback. You mentioned Washington. If Mac Jones doesn't go 3, does he get all the way to 15 at New England? Where is Washington at? You said 19?
Right.
Does he get down to 19? I don't know. It could be an Aaron Rodgers, like TJ and I were talking about before the show, a 2005 situation where a Brady Quinn situation where we're just focused on him I don't know if he's going to be in Cleveland. He might be. But are we just focused on him in the green room because he's just sitting there waiting to hear his name called?
Normally, I would say somebody's going to be sitting there. I just think that NFL teams are so thirsty for a shot at a starting quarterback that they're gonna be flying off the shelves. The Carolina Panthers at 8 are another really interesting team. They've traded for Sam Darnold, obviously, but word on the street is that they are enamored, their owner specifically, with Justin Fields. So do they draft a quarterback? Sam Darnold's still relatively cheap this year.
Yeah. But have not picked up his fifth year
option, so they have to decide.
There were also lots of rumors about the Carolina being interested in Deshaun Watson
right
when the offseason first began. So,
right. But now they have a guy. I just don't know if that behooves you. Granted, you didn't mortgage much to bring Sam Darnold down to Carolina. You're not paying him a ton. I guess you could hedge your bet a little bit and draft Justin Fields, but if you were confident enough to make a trade for Darnold, to me, I'm at least picking up that fifth-year option. I'm putting some weapons around him and seeing what we have. There is a dearth of quarterback talent in next year's draft, and I think that's scaring a lot of teams right now. Mm-hmm. I think they are worried about, hey, if you're the Atlanta Falcons and you have Matt Ryan, who could play another 4 years, I think at a relatively high level, and you don't plan on being in the top 5 again, should you draft a quarterback? Arthur Smith, an offensive guy, a former offensive lineman at the University of North Carolina. One of the great stories in the NFL. Dad is Fred Smith, who started FedEx. And Arthur worked his way up the ranks. Having a billionaire father may have helped him initially get into the league. He broke in on one of Joe Gibbs' staff as a low-level assistant and then worked his way up, hung around Tennessee through 3 or 4 different head coaches. When Matt LaFleur left for the Green Bay Packers head coaching job, he marched into Mike Vrabel's office and said, I deserve this, I want this, and this is why. And Vrabel was like, all right, I was going to look at you anyway, but now I think you're my guy. And after 2 years as the OC, he is now the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And this is a guy who's really smart. He's a great play caller. He plays to his strengths, obviously, in Tennessee. Derrick Henry runs for over 2,000 yards. But if you're that guy, if you're Arthur Smith, do you want to come into your first shot at an NFL head coaching job and have to transition to a rookie quarterback in your first year or two? Or do you want to go with a guy that got you to the Super Bowl?
Right. MVP in the league.
Right.
Guy who can still get it done. Mm-hmm. And they can't move on from Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan will be the Falcons quarterback for at least 2 years.
It's such a huge cap hit, right?
So it's just giant. It's like $70 million after this year. It's $40 million after 2021. So he will be their quarterback. Roll the dice. Take Kyle Pitts and let's rock and roll with this offense. If you trade Julio Jones, fine. You can get younger wide receivers with the draft capital you get back. If not, hey, you run it back with a future Hall of Famer, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, a mishmash of running backs, and let's rock and roll. You have 5 first-round picks on the offensive line. Protect Matt. Let's go.
And Rap Sheet said earlier this week that they had such huge salary cap issues that at this juncture, based on the way things are right now, they wouldn't be able to sign all their draft picks. So they're going to have to move some money around. And I don't think, you said roll of the dice. I don't think it's a roll of the dice to take Kyle Pitts. I think it's a roll of the dice to take a quarterback, right? Like in my mind.
Right. I mean, roll the dice with Matt.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Thinking that you've got, a 2 to 3 year window with Matt Ryan here, load him up with some weapons and see what you can do.
Do you trade Julio or do you keep Julio around?
I think I would trade Julio.
I think a 32-year-old wide receiver who's going to be a Hall of Famer who at certain points in his career has been the very best wide receiver in the league. If you can get something in return for him and maybe shed that salary, with Ridley, with Pitts, with a running game that I think will be improved with Arthur Smith as the head coach. Yeah, I it's painful to say. You traded one of the best in the game, but he had an injury-plagued season last year. His cap number's huge. And maybe to me, that makes more sense to start rebuilding there as opposed to start rebuilding at the quarterback position in your first years.
Yeah, I think whatever picks you get back for Julio this year, you can take receivers with that and kind of, piece together what you would get out of his production. But, you save yourself some money, move on. Bid adieu to him.
Gosh, I'm so pumped up that we're only 15 minutes into the show and we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg here in terms of what we're going to get to with the draft, which is coming up tomorrow.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.